Let's just listen here.
Seek and ye shall find. Be careful what you wish for. You might just get it. Those are phrases we hear all our lives, almost in passing. But the older I get, the more I realize how much truth they carry. Because we all have a tendency to go digging. Digging for answers, for meaning, for where we come from. We dig for gold, for lost worlds, for buried treasures, and sometimes for truths we didn't even know we were ready to uncover or to face. That thought was sitting with me the other day while I was talking with a friend of mine at work, who was almost buzzing with excitement as he started telling me what his ancestry DNA search had uncovered so far. Hello everyone, my name is Victor, and this is Never Have I Had the Urge to Go Digging. As he talked, I could hear it in his voice, that mix of disbelief and wonder, names he'd never heard before, records that weren't supposed to exist, connections that suddenly made the past feel uncomfortably close. And I was genuinely happy for him. I really was. There's something beautiful about learning where you come from, about putting faces and stories to the blank spaces in your family tree. For some people, that kind of knowledge feels grounding, affirming, even liberating, like finally finding a missing piece of a puzzle. But as I listened, a quieter thought started forming in the back of my mind. Because digging doesn't always stop where you think it will. You start out looking for roots, and sometimes you end up uncovering rot. You go searching for context and find consequences instead. And once something buried is brought to the surface, there's no putting it back. That's the part we don't talk about enough. The cost of knowing. My friend explained that he and a cousin had been working together, building their family tree, climbing branch by branch further back than anyone in his family ever had. If I'm remembering correctly, they were able to trace things back nearly 3 generations. What they discovered on his mother's side came as a complete surprise. His great-grandfather, someone the family thought they understood, had 5 children with 2 different other women, 3 with one, 2 with another. Entire branches of the family no one had known existed. What struck me wasn't shock or outrage. He didn't seem rattled at all, at least not on the surface. It felt more like new information being absorbed into an old story. He told me how he had sat down with his grandmother, who's still alive, and shared everything they had uncovered so far, about how the family reacted, about what it felt like to put words to something that they had lived with quietly for decades. And he went on to tell me that they had uncovered some more information on a couple of aunts of his, I believe. And as he talked, I couldn't help but think about my own family. My sister and one of my nieces had once started looking into our family history too. Nothing as deep, maybe a generation or 2 back. And at least so far, nothing like what my friend had uncovered. No seismic revelations, no hidden branches suddenly appearing out of nowhere. But that contrast stayed with me, because digging doesn't guarantee discovery. It just guarantees the possibility of it. And once you open that door, you don't get to decide what's waiting on the other side. That realization sent my thoughts spiraling outward, past him, past my family, past surnames and dates, and all the way back to the beginning. To lineage, to ancestry in its purest form, to to the countless lives, choices, secrets, and coincidences that had to exist for any one of us to be standing here now. It's strange when you really sit with it, how much of who we are rests on stories we were never told. How much of our existence depends on people we'll never know. And maybe that curiosity has always been there. When I think back, I can see hints of it long before I had language for it. I remember being a kid lying on my stomach on the floor for hours, surrounded by little plastic dinosaurs my mom used to buy me, lining them up, moving them around, making up worlds in my head. Comic books, dirt under my fingernails, scraped knees. No screens, no algorithms, just imagination. Back then, curiosity wasn't something you searched for. It was something you played with. There's an old saying, one that goes back to the days of pirates and sailors who believed the sea could swallow anything. Dead men tell no tales. For most of human history, that was true. Time was a kind of mercy. Secrets dissolved, stories faded, silence was guaranteed. But at some point, something changed. When the first dinosaur bones were unearthed, just fragments scattered and incomplete, buried for millions of years, they weren't seen as meaningless remains. Someone looked at those pieces and imagined the whole. They reconstructed a past. They took fragments and assembled meaning. They proved that time doesn't destroy everything. Sometimes it actually preserves it. And maybe that was the moment we crossed an invisible line. Because once we learned how to rebuild their past, it was only a matter of time before we turned that same instinct inward toward our families, our histories, ourselves. So maybe DNA tests and genealogy charts aren't the beginning of this urge. Maybe they're just the latest tools. And sometimes, digging doesn't just rewrite the past, it disrupts the present. There have been real cases where someone simply researching their family history uncovered truths no one was prepared for. One woman, following a few genetic inconsistencies, kept pulling on a thread, only to discover she wasn't alone, that she had dozens, possibly even hundreds of half-siblings she never knew existed. What started as curiosity ended with families being upended, identities shaken, relationships forced to reconcile with truths that had been hidden quietly for decades. And it doesn't always involve something that extreme. There are countless quieter stories. People taking DNA tests out of curiosity, only to learn that the man who raised them wasn't their biological father, or discovering siblings they never knew existed, or realizing late in life that the story they were told growing up wasn't the whole story. For some, it brings clarity. For others, confusion. And for many, both at the same time. No one involved set out to cause harm. No one woke up intending to change the lives of strangers. But once the truth surfaces, it can't be put back where it came from. That's the part we rarely talk about. Because digging doesn't just uncover answers, it creates aftermath. That doesn't mean we stop asking questions, and it doesn't mean curiosity is dangerous. It just means that we should be mindful. Because what we once trusted time to erase, it now preserves. And digging doesn't make us bad people. Curiosity isn't a flaw. But it does change the ground beneath our feet. And once the soil is disturbed, it's never quite the same again. Just ask those who work in law enforcement. They've built entire careers around what happens when the digging doesn't stop. Sometimes we believe the answers are buried somewhere in the past, waiting for us to uncover them. But not everything that's buried needs to be dug back up. Some things were laid to rest and should be left alone for a reason. And sometimes peace of mind isn't found in the digging. It's found in choosing to let the ground stay still. Maybe the question isn't, what would I find? Maybe it's, why do I feel the urge to look at all? Or maybe, am I ready for what might find me? And remember, behind every want lies that urge. Behind every urge, there's a need. Until next time, thank you for joining me on Never Have I Had the Urge.